So we have the presidential.
He's Saul.
I'm trying to do my lines here.
Head and shoulders.
So we had the presidential election that's before us. What thoughts would you share with Christians who are getting ready to go vote between President Trump and Senator Biden?
Well, I think it's it's difficult to share any thoughts. I think they're all about thought it out. From hearing people, I know various articles have been going around. I think Wayne Grudem responded to Piper's article. I know Doug did. There's been, seems to me, tons of debate, tons of discussion. So you kind of feel like entering into a food fight in the lunchroom. And so I kind of think about the Christian who is kind of discouraged by it and put off by it, and how to make sense of the food fight, in other words. And I guess that's where I would start from and kind of share from that perspective. That there's a tendency to kind of pull back, and it's very common idea that politics is not something you should get into, and that doesn't have anything to do with the gospel. And I fundamentally disagree with that because of the gospel. So I understand the gospel to involve saying that Jesus is Lord. And it's not a local claim to lordship, it's a universal claim to lordship. So he's called the Lord of Lords, King of Kings. So when you say Jesus is Lord in a very basic gospel message, it is by definition a political statement. Polish just means city, so he's Lord of every city. So I will start from that perspective, that there's a lot of stigma about talking about politics, and I actually think it'd be a sin to not talk about it, because it'd be a sin to not obey the lordship of Christ. So that out there, how to address this food fight, of some people saying, evangelicals for Biden, against Biden, or for Trump. First, I would put it around certain words. So the first word I would circle around would be judgmentalism. If Jesus is Lord, that means he's Lord of everyone's conscience and all of that. And I don't, while I fundamentally disagree with voting for Biden because of Christ's lordship, I also fundamentally disagree with automatically judging someone as being lost for voting for Biden, because I don't think we always know what the premises, you'll like that, the premises are in someone's mind when they're voting. It's kind of like the statue thing. Like, there's more than one reason to want a statue up or down. There's some ambiguity. So there's more than one reason to vote for Biden that someone could have in their mind. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that we can totally know what people have in their mind without talking to them and finding out. So I think we should, I don't know if you have a follow-up to that. That would be the first one I'll throw out.
It seems that Christians are dealing with a morality issue with both candidates. And so there's a lot of discussion between which one is more evil. You'll hear Christians say that I can't vote for Biden because he's pro-abortion. You'll hear Christians say I can't vote for Trump because he's egotistical and rude and prideful and the list goes on. So there's morality seems to be a big part of people's decision in this, and there seems to be ways in which they're interpreting morality and weighing it out. So what would you speak to on that, of how a Christian should work through that issue of morality between the two candidates?
Yeah, I don't know all the reasons why. As I said in the first point, people would be trying to justify voting for Biden, but that does hit me as trying to justify voting for Biden, or is at least trying to justify the possibility of it, like what Piper did. And to try to do so by just equating, just kind of just generalizing all sin together, and it's not, because Jesus said to Pilate, "He who delivered me to you committed the greater sin." So there is greater and lesser sin. Like, we don't give someone the death penalty for speeding, but they should get the death penalty for first degree murder. And, we don't give them a $270 fine for first degree murder. So the idea that basic egotism of Trump is equivalent to the KKK hanging people on a tree doesn't make sense to me. And I'll use that exact one on purpose, because I've been using Hitler and it doesn't hit, but I very much doubt that Piper would argue that it was okay to vote for the KKK. And I very much doubt that a lot of people would say, well, it's okay, we can't talk about politics. I think people would be extremely uncomfortable. Or what if somebody wanted to vote for a party that wanted to reinstitute the enslavement of black Americans? I don't think people would say, oh, it's politics, we can't talk about that. So I think it's a sort of a game, it's not a game, but it's a device to try to justify it. I mean, obviously. One problem with it is it assumes that the other guy's not arrogant. And I don't know, I mean, it assumes that, like, the outward display of a sin is the only indicator of the sin. Like Judas committed a greater sin, as it is said there, than Pilate, but it was hidden at the time. So, Trump's is out there, his flamboyant character, but how arrogant do you have to be to say that you have a right to delete a section of humans?
What you mean by that is?
Abortion. So, to me, it's just Thanos. The idea that someone has a right to delete a section of humanity and just end them and take their life and steal their life from them and call it a right. I mean, that's Isaiah, right? Woe to those who call good evil and evil good, and light darkness and darkness light. The lights are out in someone's head and heart, if they can say that. So the murder issue, I mean, if you can't make a stand on genocide and infanticide, like, what can you? And how can you trust someone, to look out for any good of a human if they're willing to kill another human, and act like that's their right? That's like their foundational right to America, like to be able to take life. I mean, it's the most absurd. So anyway, that's thought on that. The climate, and then they say, oh, here's two other thoughts. They say the climate, climate change. Like, well, that's a life issue. And I want to say, well, yeah, for those that you chose to allow to have life. So it's similar to the KKK wanting a good climate for all the white people. You know, so these things are going on, like climate change and abortion, going on simultaneously, and people are trying to look at them as though they're not. And the other thing I noticed about this this life movement, you know, they talk about like, well, you're not pro-life because to be pro-life is from womb to tomb, they say. Well, this is interesting because I'm old enough to remember it wasn't too long ago where when the racism card was being played, Black Lives Matter, and someone said, no, all lives matter. They said, you can't say that. So this to me seems like now they're using the thing that they said you couldn't say, because here you are talking about this some life and they're wanting to say, oh no, all of life. So,
what would you say to someone who looks at abortion and says it cannot be overturned? It hasn't been overturned for decades. There's been multiple conservative Supreme Court justices put into office. And even though there's been conservatives put on the Supreme Court, this Roe versus Wade will never be overturned. Therefore, it's not something that I'm willing to make a major issue. So they're saying the position that Biden has about abortion is muted in their mind because they don't think that's an issue that can be changed.
I guess I don't buy the premise that it can't. I don't know how it can't be changed if the man stated that he is willing to make Roe the law of the land, even and try to work towards an amendment to the Constitution for it. I mean, he's not trying to keep the needle where it is.
Right.
So he's certainly trying to change it. So I guess I don't understand the argument.
So we would say that it appears based on what he has stated that Biden is not neutrally looking at abortion, but he is looking to advance the...
Oh yeah, him and Harris are adamantly opposed to any kind of restriction, any kind of like, I mean, as I said, they view it as a fundamental right. Mm-hmm. So any kind of pushback, they're going to fight against. And so there is currently pushback there. So they're going to have as their agenda to widen out their liberty to do that.
What do you say to the Christian who looks at the two options and just decides, I'm just not going to vote? And they feel like that's just the only way that their conscience won't be just inflamed.
Right. They certainly can, and that goes back to the first thing of judgmentalism. We never know unless we talk to each person what's on their mind. So one thing to make clear is I'm not saying that a Christian has to vote for Trump. I understand that there are different morality issues there that could hit someone and disgust someone and make someone uncomfortable to support him for whatever reason. I think they're making a mistake, but they can make an honest mistake. So it can be objectively wrong, but they can feel subjectively okay with it. And God is concerned with that, like Romans 14. Like, if you think the meat is evil, it's evil. So even if they're objectively wrong, if they subjectively feel that it would be evil based on the premises they have in their mind, then I would say to some degree it would be evil for them to pull the lever. I mean, they'd be doing something that they think is evil. But objectivity remains, right? Because Paul says he knows that the meat is clean. So I think they still should vote for Trump because of the issues that are at stake, which I said they may not have in their mind. They may not understand these things, but they may not have a lot of history on communism and stuff like that. And so they may not see the gravity of it. Perhaps you would rather Trump over a Biden for sure. Because I mean, a Biden might end the entire nation. So in one way, you're voting so that you can vote again.
What would you say to a Christian who goes with a third-party candidate and just feels like my conscience is slightly twinged with Trump's character, and so, but I still want to vote, I still want to participate, and so they go with a third-party candidate?
Same thing as, I can see where someone would land there and do that, possibly. But once again, I assume all these people asking this question lock their doors on their house at night. And I would ask, why do you do that? To protect your family. And so when you vote against communism, communism slaughters your family. So you're really only asking you to do what you're already doing, protect your family. When you try to vote to prevent that. It's sort of like like John Piper. I wonder when he goes to get surgery or something like that, does the guy have to be humble, to do his surgery? Or if he needs a plumber to come over, a guy comes over and he can fully fix the problem, but he's really, really arrogant. Does he live that out everywhere? Like, well, look, you're too arrogant. I'm going to find a different plumber. And so if you don't do it for a plumber, it's like, why would you do it for someone with more ability to affect more stuff? The thing is, again, and like I said, this separation of a personal and the policy is just false. It's tree and fruit, right? So Biden has policies of mandatory transgender freedom, full sexual revolution in the name of the law, full reproductive rights to slaughter. I mean, that ain't coming from a Philippians 2 heart. And so I think it's presumptuous to think just because Trump's is showing in some certain way that it's more arrogant. I think Biden is far more arrogant than Trump. So I would say if Piper's argument has any weight, then it should go against Biden, because to murder a section of humans and to be committed to doing it, and to be committed to doing it in the name of it being good and you're right, I don't know how you could be more arrogant.
I think that's important to that the Christian think through the full ramifications of the election. Would be another way that it's not as simple and shallow as I'm going to vote for a third-party candidate because they've only been married one time. They seem to be more conservative and more reserved and maybe more evangelical. Whereas in the same time as they're pursuing that, trying to kind of almost take the easy route to not being someone who supported Trump and not being someone who supported Biden, they find this kind of safe middle position in voting. And I don't think they're thinking through the full ramifications of what that vote actually does when you go to a third-party candidate, based on the way our system operates.
Right. Yeah, sure. Because once again, like when they go get their oil changed, do they check to see if the guy who's screwing the cap back on as a Christian, and a good one and everything. I mean, how do they know he won't just do something wicked and shortchange and they put their family in the car and they never ask any questions about his morality or whatever, because they went there for an oil change, not a sermon. And you're picking a president. There's this idea that the president is there. I mean, it's the executive office of the government. It's the idea there that he's to be a counselor and our comforter in chief.
Right.
I mean, they don't realize. They can't. They don't have the right premises in their mind. For example, just to throw one more out there, when Biden said in that town hall that he wanted to make it the law of the land that an 8-year-old could go through a full transgendered change of sex, that is a denial of such a fundamental truth that if that law were to go into effect, it's a denial of male and female. Like, it's that far down. So you can't even preach the gospel. Like, people don't realize the ramifications of that law is it's now illegal to preach the gospel, because to preach the gospel, you got to start with creation. And that's the thing. They want to be free of the Creator. So you can't even state most basic gospel truths. And so Paul tells us in 1 Timothy 2 to pray and support kings and rulers that will allow us to do that. So I could say I think they should see that it's wrong to vote for Biden based on 1 Timothy 2. We want someone in office. Why are we here? We want to preach the gospel. So, of course, we want someone in office who's going to allow us the most freedom to do that.